Presentation of dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family legacy of building the great state of Idaho.
Coming up next on Dialogue, author Thomas Keneally talks about how he came to write the book that was turned into the movie Schindler's List. That's Dialogue next. Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Marcia Franklin. A welcome as well to those of you listening on NPR News 91 and the World Wide Web. Tonight we bring you one of a series of conversations conducted at the 2005 Sun Valley Writers Conference. Since 1995, the conference has brought together some of the nation's best-known writers, poets, filmmakers, and philosophers to engage an audience in provocative and thoughtful conversations. One of those authors is Thomas Keneally. Certainly one of the most successful Australian writers in that nation's history, Keneally's works have been shortlisted for the coveted Booker Prize 4 times. Keneally is known for taking on the causes of underdogs, such as Australian Aborigines. Along the same lines, he's most famous for his book about the Holocaust called Schindler's Ark, which was adapted into the movie Schindler's List. Your most famous work, I would assume by far, is Schindler's List. Known as Schindler's Ark, though, when you wrote it. Explain the difference. What does Schindler's Ark mean?
Well, between Schindler and his prisoners, there was a kind of rough covenant, which was that if you do the books, if you Jewish accountants do the books for the respectable side of the business, and if you Jewish engineers keep this enamel works and small armaments work going at an official level, and keep everything straight, and if you people on the factory floor manufacture at a good pace, then I'll look after you. I won't let the SS on the factory floor. I'll make sure you're fed, etc., etc. So when I spoke of Schindler's Ark, I was thinking of the Ark of the Covenant. But I had given the American publisher 2 titles, either Schindler's Ark or Schindler's List. I liked both of them, and the American publisher said that American Jewry would not get the reference to the Ark of the Covenant, but would see it as another story of Jews being passive and entering the Ark 2 by 2.
Oh, like Noah's Ark.
Yes, and so I argued very strongly that they wouldn't, but after about 3 months, my agent and I gave in. So Steven Spielberg, when the film was made, was often accused. I was with him at a press conference in Vienna where he said, a journalist said, "Why did you change the name to Schindler's List?" And he said, because that's the title of the book as I first encountered it in 1982. And he's quite right. Of course, I wasn't expecting the book to be as well known. I was expecting it to be like my other books. The center of a small cult, of course, highly refined, highly intelligent, highly glamorous cult, but a small cult nonetheless.
In point of fact, just to clarify, Schindler himself did not make up the list, did he?
Well, this is interesting that this is a news story that came out, I think, during this year or last year when Mr. Crow's biography on Schindler was published. And it is true that in my book and in Crow's book, Schindler doesn't make up the list. He forwards a list to the big concentration camp. And there are a number of versions of it. And so it was altered. And as Crow says, it wasn't, there was no one list, but there is one list in the sense there is a final list. The people on it were all saved.
Does it bother you when people go back and take a look at your work and say, oh, here's an inaccuracy here, there wasn't really a Schindler's List?
No, it doesn't worry me, but there's a tendency to think that my book and the film are the same thing. It's a flattering tendency, but there is material in the book that's not in the film. There are different nuances in the. It's always that way, even in good films, because the director sees himself as an auteur too. He doesn't see himself as someone who has to make the mother of the author happy.
Has that book overshadowed your other work in any way?
I think it's helped my other work. I think any writer is A, lucky to be able to write, B, especially lucky to make a living, C, to be known for any book as miraculous. I think it's a very benign challenge to a writer, a kindly challenge, to have a book by which they're known, and then they can either say, oh, don't mention that old thing again, or they can say, well, now for the rest of my life, my objective is to write a book which knocks that book off its pedestal. Because the problem is that Spielberg doesn't make all my books into films. He's been very remiss in that regard. He's only made one. People come to me and say, do you think you could get this script to Spielberg? And I say, well, first of all, he invites the outsider. He doesn't invite me in to lumber him with scripts. Secondly, I'd get him to make all my corpus of work first, and then you could be next on the line. So, but I'm very proud of some of my other work and very attached to it. As proud as you can be, of course, as you probably know, no writer ever goes back on a night when you're feeling poorly and looks up a book from the past and reads it to himself and says, how clever I am, I shouldn't be depressed. Because reading your own work only depresses you further for this reason that you can never achieve the ultimate that you think you're going for when you write the book. Randall Jarrell, the great American poet and critic, said, a novel is a fiction of uncertain length with something wrong with it. And I believe that that's so.
I assume you liked what Mr. Spielberg did with your novel.
All you can hope for is what you hope for at your child's marriage. That this stranger on whose family you're spending all this money and all this hope, that this stranger will treat your child with integrity. And I think Spielberg certainly did that. He went for the ambiguities that interested me. He can read a book and find out what the heart is.
When Mr. Spielberg was making this movie, he has said that there were days where he just wanted to walk off the set, leave the project. He would cry. It really emotionally tore at him. When you were researching this book, did you have similar emotions? Now, he's Jewish, obviously, so
yes.
some of that was because of that.
Look, I have had a number of books. I tend to be a joker personally and a bit of a rioter and make a lot of noise and tell jokes. But I'm a grim person within myself, and I always end up chronicling man's hysteria against other men and women. And yet when you're a writer, and the same thing happens to journalists, you think you're going to get in, get the story, and get out unscathed. And it never happens. You cannot listen, as we did with the Schindler book, to all those people who had been children when the Holocaust was on, and there, at least the adults knew what the Nazis were thinking. The children didn't know what it was all for. It was all a mystery for them. They just knew they were in perpetual danger, that their friends were disappearing and that their relatives were disappearing. And they were the most scarred, and to an extent, their scars were in a small way transferred to you. Another time, I wrote a book on East Africa, and I went into Eritrea in East Africa from the Sudan, another catastrophic country, and lived with the group called the Eritrean People's Liberation Front. Well, they were being bombed daily. They were protecting a perimeter that was full of terrified refugees who had fled the Ethiopian army. Again, you think this is a story about a rebel front that's distributing food properly, that has feminist principles, that has female soldiers, that is inventive, runs its hospitals well, and you're going to get in and get this great story and get out. No way. No, but you always hope you will get in and get out, because, as you know, writers are opportunists. The reason I like writing about things like this is because where races are up against each other is the greatest drama. Take Australia, where, say, a white woman falls in love with an Aboriginal man. Across the divide of culture, it can be a catastrophe for both, but there are people on both sides who want to kill them. It's the most dramatic story there is, the story of love and fraternity and meanness across the cultural divide. And sadly, ethnic hysteria doesn't seem to be a habit we're giving up at all. And so there's plenty of stories for novels. But in going into those situations, you do run up against, you get exhilarated by the nobility of some of the people who are surviving, but you also get shocked by the wounds. You get shocked by the physical wounds and the psychological wounds. And on top of that, you can't just swan into people's lives and say, goodbye, see you soon, I'm going to write a book, I'll hope you well for the rest of your life. You owe them something from then on. And so I would like to be able to think that we can simply be storytellers, but in being storytellers, we are almost inevitably changed into activists.
Speaking of getting in and out of a story, one other question on Schindler's List. You literally stumbled across this story. It's almost become apocryphal now, but you went in to have a piece of luggage fixed, and the gentleman who ran the shop, as he had with many other people who said they were writers, said, have I got a story for you?
Yes.
And you actually listened and did something with it. He was one of the people who had been saved by Schindler. You've said that ideas for stories come like falling in love, that you can't really, push them away. Do you believe in fate? Do you believe somehow that this story was meant to come to you? Other people had been told about it, but hadn't done anything about it.
When I heard the story, I didn't think I'll make a documentary on this subject, or I will make a small television feature, or I'll write an article for the Washington Post. My natural impulse was to see it as a book, my habitual impulse.
But something about this idea just stuck with you.
Yes, I'll tell you what it was. Here was this big, vivid man, or blocky, athletic, vivid man, Poldek Pfefferberg, who was the man I met in LA. And he was funny, and he was loud, and he was fraternal, and he was generous. But I could not see one thing in him that meant that he was so toxic to European civilization that his oxygen had to be taken from him. And so even in him, because he was so vivid and loud and wonderful, I thought, what is it with anti-Semitism that Europe, high Europe, I'm a European from Australia, but I'm a bumpkin European, from Irish ancestry, and Australians are the rough trade of the European diaspora. Why am I shocked by the fact that this man was once under the axe? How did high Europe do it? The Europe from which plain chant and Mozart and Beethoven and Goethe and Schiller and Heine came. How was it possible? And so, in a way, I was writing myself into the mystery too. And Poldek thought that was a good idea. I said, I'm an Australian, the furthest Europeans there are. After us, it's the penguins of Antarctica. I told him that that I was, a ruined Catholic. I had very little Jewish experience. And he kept on saying, that's wonderful, you don't have an axe to grind. And it was just too good a story. Schindler was also a sort of, a much worse Catholic than me, because he had a facility with women. And
that's what I wanted to ask you about, though. Schindler certainly is a complicated hero, and you're drawn to these people who are heroes.
Paradox.
Exactly, paradoxical hero. He had a lot of flaws to him, but something about that type of person you're interested in.
Very much. I'm interested in how active they are. I'm interested in how, while my type of person is saying, oh, this is appalling, and might go on with a little bit of underground agitation, which may get us executed with the Jews, but to run an operation like his second factory is genuine heroism, recklessness.
What attracts you to these flawed heroes?
Oh, well, I think it's because, having been raised in the severe old days of Catholicism, and having found that those who were defined by the Catholic institution of the Catholic Church as righteous people were actually miserable sods, and that often, if you wanted redemption, you had to look to the men who were conventionally flawed, but genuinely full of compassion. You know, the old St. Paul thing, if you speak with the voice of angels and have not love, you are like tinkling cymbals. Too many tinkling cymbals. And there are too many tinkling cymbals in the church altogether. It's, I wish it were not so. So I am perversely attracted to flawed heroes, to people who would not be able to get a reference from their bishop saying, Mr. Schindler is a good practical Catholic. I'm attracted to the idea of the Holy Spirit listing where it will, doing good wherever it flew through flawed vessels. And so I never want to write about saints. Mind you, you show me a saint and I'll show you a myth. Because we're a pretty flawed species, aren't we? But then novelists are always attracted to the flawed hero.
In addition to your writing, you're also involved in politics, in social movement, and specifically the Australian Republic movement. And I don't think many people in this country know anything about that. What does that movement stand for?
Well, we were just trying to sever peaceably the constitutional relationship between Australians and the Queen of England. We find it, through no fault of Her Madge, offensive that we should have to take oaths to her as our head of state, or that new citizens should have to take oaths to her, and indeed they don't anymore. We didn't win at the ballot, but we've won in the gradual republicanization of Australian institutions. And very soon after this present Prime Minister goes, who is the last Queen lover, very soon we'll be a republic. We had to show that we were our own people, and that Australia, this weird continent, had made us our own people, and that we trusted ourselves well enough to have our own president of some form.
In your current book that you're working on, you're looking at the nexus between Britain, America, and the founding of Australia.
Yes.
And how America, in some sense, had something to do with.
Oh, yes, and it wasn't called Australia then. That term didn't come into use until from 1814 onwards it came into use. But after the American Revolution, the British jails filled up because they had nowhere to send their prisoners. They used to use private contractors to ship them over here and sell their labor. But the Eastern American colonies were not purpose-built penal settlements. And when the overcrowding of the jails due to the American Revolution became intolerable, the British thought of devised New South Wales, which was the Mars of that age. It's easier to get to the space shuttle than it was then to get there. Only a handful of Europeans had ever been there. And they were so desperate to empty the prisons and to empty the hulks at Plymouth, Portsmouth, and in the Thames, old ships that were used as prisons, that they took the risk of sending 11 ships all that intergalactic way to Australia. And a lot of the people who provided those ships were men who'd been sent broke by the Americans and were rebuilding their fortunes. They were men who had ships brokers, people who had traded with the American colonies, and the American colonies had an American businessman had a chance, because of the revolution, not to pay the bills that were owing to them. And many of them didn't,
So these guys were out of work and they were looking...
And these fellas were owed, I know one of the ship owners was owed £38,000 from America. Now, £38,000 was a prodigious fortune. You know, it's over $1 billion now. So he got into hulks and convict transports. And then, of course, there's the question of crime, what generates crime, and who were these people? Who were these mainly young men and young women who had committed the crimes? And
also, what was the reaction upon seeing a civilization that had been there for 60,000 years, the Aboriginals?
Absolutely. It's very much about when the Europeans arrived on the beautiful east coast of Australia. It is very beautiful. Sorry, did I say when the 11 ships arrived on the beautiful east coast, the Aboriginal tribes around Sydney, the Eora language group, thought that they were ghosts who'd fallen through lesions in the sky. They thought they were ghost women at first. And therefore, they became anthropologists to these ghosts, and they tried to work out what the ghosts meant. And first, they might try to enchant them, to sing them away. These were
the prisoners they were trying to sing away.
And the guards, and the sailors, and the whole caboose. And then they tried finding out whether they were male and female. And when a sailor was asked to drop his pants to demonstrate to them that he was a male, they offered women to these ghosts. And it didn't matter, because that was like a bit like computer sex, you know. It wasn't really serious, because these ghosts were outside any tribal prohibitions against sex. And then when that didn't work, some of them tried serious diplomatic negotiation, and others took to the spear. But of course, the Europeans, as always, had superior weaponry. They also had this mystery that Jared Diamond deals with so well in Guns, Germs and Steel, of bacteria and viruses. And amongst the bacteria, the diseases that quickly made their impact on the Eora were smallpox, and it's a mystery where it came from because none of the Europeans had it. Smallpox, syphilis, which the Europeans did have, and gonorrhea. And those, long before the Europeans were able to break out of the Sydney Basin and move inland, those bacteria and microorganisms colonized the area, so that when explorers ultimately got out to these remote areas, they found women with extreme and fully blown syphilis in a far more acute stage than was normally seen in Europeans.
As much as you know about your country, as you research this book, are you finding things that you never knew about before that you think you'll be able to bring to a wider audience?
I hope so. I'm trying to explain why this penal colony, which was not allowed at first to be a commercial colony because the Dutch East India Company didn't want it to be, why it worked.
Why it became a functioning democratic society made out of prisoners originally.
Exactly. And no other. I mean, imagine if you made a penal settlement out of men and women from jails in Central California. You sent them to the remotest location. You did provide them with a marginal amount of support. There was great famine in early Sydney, but you did sort of support them, but you left them to their devices, them and the guards, because prison guards are always ambiguous figures too. Would you expect it to work? Well, you know, you wouldn't put your mortgage on it, would you? And so this is, I try in the book to explain why it worked and why it led to civil society and why it led to, you know, a relatively sophisticated society.
And the name of the book will be?
The Commonwealth of Thieves.
Well, it sounds like, as usual, you're having a lot of fun with your work, and we look forward to seeing that book along with the rest of your children, your 29 or 30 other children. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to author Thomas Keneally, one of a series of interviews conducted at the Sun Valley Writers Conference in 2005. If you'd like to hear the full interview again or the other ones, please check out our website at idahoptv.org/dialogue. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you'll join us same time next week.
Presentation of dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family legacy of building the great state of Idaho.